Let's talk football. Okay, welcome to Artistic Independency. Let's Talk Football podcast number 1. I'm your host, John Behrens, and today co-hosting with me is Joshua Perkin.
What's going on, everybody?
All right, so the preseason's already kicked off, and quite honestly, you can't really get much out of the preseason. You know, it's other than maybe some vibes of how things are going to go, who's going to be a good player. But as far as like overall team performance, you really can't pick up one. Number ones and number twos playing every down, except for the first drive.
It's training camp. Not only that, preseason week 1, this is team's first chance to get their hands on somebody else. And so it's a kind of chance to be able to knock the cobwebs off your game plan, not really as far as who you putting in at 1 and 2. I mean, you don't really get a good look at who's going to be playing in the regular season. This is just a chance for, the draft picks to get their feet wet, a chance for undrafted free agents to prove themselves, to be able to make their 53-man roster. So it's just kind of a little taster and a little teaser to the future.
Absolutely. It's when you're sitting like 9 of your 11 starters day one, and it's like they don't get in until like preseason games or something like that. Just knock some of the rust off. Any first thoughts on the preseason so far?
Well, I just want to start off with the Saints. A pretty good victory against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I was very impressed with their defense and the way they moved the ball on offensively. I mean, they struggled in the first half. There's still a lot of room for improvement, but it's the preseason. Taysom Hill looked really good, being able to move around the pocket, making good throws, making good decisions. The defense looked really well, getting pressure on the quarterback, getting into the backfield, and they really let loose in the second half. First half, they had a hard time getting to the quarterback, getting into the backfield, but they really showed a lot of poise in the second half. I was also able to pay attention to a little bit of the New York Giants versus Cleveland Browns game, where Saquon Barkley looked amazing, and Baker Mayfield with the accuracy with his touchdown, going 11 for 20, and also Sam Darnold going 13 for 22, throwing a touchdown in his debut with the Jets. And so preseason, we're starting to see a lot of these rookies, but what I want to look at is, are they able to live up to the flash? Meaning, what do you mean by live up to the flash? In the preseason, you have a lot of players show hot flashes and showing flashes of their potential, but when they get in the regular season, they flop. And so, can they live up to the flashes that they're showing in the preseason?
Example, Devontae Harris.
I got a better one, DeShone Kizer.
Yeah, that was definitely.
DeShone Kizer, last season with the Browns, preseason, he looked pretty good, but he completely flopped, in which resulted in him getting traded to Green Bay.
Cleveland picking up Tyrod Taylor, and he come out on fire that first series. I thought that was pretty impressive.
And also picking up Baker Mayfield. So they have options. I mean, look at the Browns. That was probably one of the most impressive teams during the free agency. They just completely did a 180. And I wondered why in the world would they keep Hugh Jackson after posting a 1-31 record in his 2 seasons with the Cleveland Browns. Apparently, that Browns front office, either they're just completely crazy, going to take a gamble, or they have something up their sleeve. And looking at the free agency, they definitely had something up their sleeve.
Well, Jackson had nothing to work with season 1 and 2. Now they, like you said, they went out and made some moves. Dorsey has proven to be a genius when it comes to moving players around and picking players up. But let's talk about the divisions. Seeing how we're just still in preseason and all. Let's start with New York Jets in the AFC the East division. So they had some key additions. They brought in Teddy Bridgewater, Isaiah Crowell, excuse me, running back from.
He played for the Browns.
Browns, I think, right? Yeah. Picked up the Rams, Tremaine Johnson, huge addition there. Terrell Pryor, potential wide receiver, and Avery Williamson, who I'm not too familiar with, to be honest with you.
I mean, with the Jets, I'm looking at some improvement from the Jets this season, especially with getting Sam Darnold at quarterback. You got McCown coming back, who's projected Week 1 starter due to his experience, and you also got Teddy Bridgewater. So with Teddy Bridgewater coming into this season, he's coming in with a chip on his shoulder, being hurt, missing finally coming back late last season for the Minnesota Vikings. And so I see Teddy Bridgewater come in with a huge chip on his shoulder, getting Tremaine Johnson, which is a huge addition to their secondary. Getting Isaiah Crowell, especially after losing Matt Forte due to retirement, they need some type of running game in the backfield and also something to take the pressure off the quarterback.
So the Jets also had some key departures in Demario Davis, a really beast of a linebacker, if you ask me. And then Coney, is it Ellie? Defensive end, and then Muhammad Wilkerson, who signed with
the Green Bay Packers.
The
Saints were actually trying to be in the sweepstakes for him. Like, the Saints were very active in the free agency market. They were trying to get Jimmy Graham back. They were trying to get Muhammad Wilkerson. And so I can honestly say they were pretty busy in this free agency.
So the Jets drafted their draft picks. I'll be honest, I was not able to really follow the specific players in the college level like I used to, but I am familiar with Sam Darnold out of USC. What are your thoughts on him?
Sam Darnold is a really good quarterback. He's very talented. He has the potential to be one of the best in the league in the next few years. What the red flag about Sam Darnold, about him at USC, is that his final year was supposed to be his breakout season, but honestly, I wasn't too impressed due to the fact he turned the ball over too much. That was his kryptonite, was turnovers. And so with Sam Darnold, he still has a lot to be desired, and he still needs to be able to hone his game. So I'm looking at Sam Darnold this season. Most likely he's going to be getting a chance to play this regular season because, a lot of Jets fans are going to be asking for him to play. Todd Bowles is dying to have him on that field. So Sam Darnold, I'm still kind of iffy about him.
Yeah, he performed well, and it looks like he performed well in the preseason game. Also, Teddy Bridgewater did real well in the preseason game. He threw a touchdown. It was I forget what his completions and incompletions was. But the Jets really do seem to be wanting to build their defense first, and then just kind of build a serviceable offense around whatever quarterback they end up going with. I do assume that Darnold's going to start at some point, but what do you think about let's just say, Josh McCown? He's just kind of the veteran in there at this point.
He's a journeyman for their team, but he showed some flashes last season of his potential as well, where he could take the Jets in his end of days in the NFL.
And so I guess the big question is, between Bridgewater and Darnold, who do you see kind of taking the number 2 spot there?
The number 2 spot, I'm going to be honest, due to experience, if I was a head coach, I'm getting a rookie quarterback, high draft pick, somebody who I want to build my franchise around. To be honest, if I was a head coach, I would want to groom him first before I let him touch the field, because Sam Darnold's going to get thrown into big-time situations. But I want him to see what it's like to be a quarterback in a big-time situation, like late game, 2-minute drill, in the playoffs. And so I will put Teddy Bridgewater as number 2 because he has more experience. And I want Sam Darnold, I want to leave no doubt that Sam Darnold is ready. So I will put Teddy Bridgewater as my number 2 due to him having more experience. And also, Teddy Bridgewater has a chip on his shoulder. You got to try and give him some type of chance. Don't be surprised if he goes number 1.
I expect him to be number 1 at some point. You don't draft someone number 3 with the intentions of having them sit on the bench for 5 years.
True. Jimmy Garoppolo was a different situation, but he was drafted 3rd or 4th round out of Eastern Illinois. And so, he didn't mind. Sitting on the bench for about 3 or 4 years, winning 2 Super Bowls, and still getting paid.
So, New England Patriots. And we've talked about this a little bit before. like I feel that for the first time in actually just a few years, they got worse over the off season. I mean, the highlight of their additions was Adrian Claiborne, who's pretty solid at cornerback. Jeremy Hill, they signed on a prove-it contract, and Jordan Matthews
recently just signed.
Yeah, he's okay, but departures. Danny Amendola. Amendola was one of your solid number threes, and as you look at his career, he is on the receiving end of a lot of key third and fourth down conversions in January and February. He's not going to be there anymore.
He was Tom Brady's old faithful,
Oh yeah, I'm outside of Gronkowski, who's another big postseason contributor, but Malcolm Butler, just a needless throwaway there. Yeah, in their locker room, tension. He sat out the Super Bowl.
What made it really bad was that it was like right before the Super Bowl when Bill Belichick told him, "Hey, you're sitting out for the Super Bowl." I could see if it was like a week in advance, like right before they boarded the plane, or right before they were heading to Minnesota. That way he knew in advance. But you just don't tell one of your players, one of your key corners, who Malcolm Butler. If you look at him at corner, he was one of the Iron Man guys of that defense. He played over 95% of the snaps for the New England Patriots on defense last season. And so, I mean, why would you wait until right before the game to tell pretty much your defensive Iron Man that he's sitting out?
And then you trade away Brandon Cooks, so your deep threat's gone. And Cameron Fleming, was it offensive guard or tackle? I forget. Exactly. Deion Lewis, one of your running backs.
He was also a key contributor for that New England offense as well. I mean, he was very versatile. He was a guy you could throw the ball to out of the backfield, and he was able to run the ball too. Not only that, he also contributed on special teams, being a returner.
Right, and then Nate Solder. The Patriots drafted a lot of guys that, quite honestly, I'm not too familiar with. I don't know if any of these jump off at you, but other than Danny Etling in the 7th round is, back up to Brady.
Also like a guy that I want to look at as far as who they drafted. It's a late round draft pick, but I've been kind of keeping up with him when he was in college. Braxton Berrios, former wide receiver of Miami, and who was a huge contributor to the Miami receiving core. Miami, they never really had a consistent offense with Malik Rozier at quarterback, but Braxton Berrios was one of the captains of that offense. He was a pretty good leader, and he was a key contributor. So hopefully he could pull through, make that roster, and hopefully get on that field for the New England Patriots, because they need some receivers.
Buffalo Bills. So they seem to be going in the right direction. They made a playoffs for the first time in 16 years. Was it 16 years? 16 years. And Sean McDermott, he looks first year pretty good. Like I said, we got the Bills back to the playoffs, first time in 16 years. They did trade away Taylor to the Browns, but they signed A.J. McCarron and drafted
Josh Allen from Wyoming.
Josh Allen. But, and also Tremaine Edmonds is the other draftee there. But the additions of Raphael Bush, we're familiar with him from the Saints. Pretty decent safety. Yeah, another decent guy. How do you say this guy's last name?
Star Latulele.
Latulele, yeah. Solid addition there. A.J. McCarron at quarterback, like we said, and then Trent Mercy at linebacker. Their departures were not very many. Preston Brown, E.J. Gaines, and Jordan Matthews. But they seem to be on the up and coming. And again, another team that looks to be building more on winning with defense first and having more of a methodical.
Also, adding Star Latulele, you're adding pressure on that defensive line. You're adding somebody who could penetrate, especially in, goal line situations. adding AJ McCarron, he's been a guy who's been sitting behind Andy Dalton for the past few years with the Cincinnati Bengals. So AJ McCarron's going to come in with a chip on the shoulder as well, considering the fact that now he can be a leader, he can be a starting quarterback, and now he can show what he can do as a leader. But you also got, remember, Josh Allen, big quarterback out of Wyoming, has a really big arm. My concern with Josh Allen is that when he was in college football, he played in the Mountain West Conference, which is not a Power 5 conference at all. So having to jump from a lower conference school like the Mountain West straight into the NFL, it kind of adds a little bit of concern to it. So with Josh Allen, he would be a guy that I would sit behind AJ McCarron. I would start AJ McCarron week 1 regular season. And since AJ McCarron, I mean, he had to go through hell and back just to get traded. He was ready to leave Cincinnati. He was ready to be a leader. So I would start AJ McCarron, groom Josh Allen to make sure he's ready.
Yeah, I could see them kind of sitting Allen for at least a little while. I could see them doing like an Aaron Rodgers with him, because he is a project. He really is. But you see, he looked pretty solid in the preseason game. But how will you do against number ones? I'm not too certain.
I mean, how do you think he'll be doing against teams like, say, they go against a team like Minnesota, or if they go against a team, just give or take, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who's always had a notoriously good defense, Baltimore Ravens, who's always had a good defense. So, and now that you can learn from Johnny Manziel's mistakes is that the NFL is a lot faster.
Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of plays where Josh Allen was in Wyoming, he threw into tight coverage and the receivers were able to come down with it. Those same passes can get picked off in the league. So Josh Allen needs to be really careful, and he needs to learn from AJ McCarron.
Miami Dolphins. I don't know what this team's plan is. I really don't. They just all over the place. They added Amendola, but they traded away Jarvis Landry. Amendola is not a number one. He really isn't. And then you trade away one of the up and rising stars, probably going to be one of the best in the league, at the peak of his career.
And for a second round pick.
Frank Gore. Okay, I love Frank Gore. He's always been Mr. Consistent, but still, I mean,
that age drop off.
Yeah, he's in the age drop off. Josh Sitton, okay, and then trade for Robert Quinn, but you cut Dominic Sue.
And not only that, they lose their all-pro center Mike Pouncey, who's been an amazing offensive lineman since coming out of Florida. And they, of course, they lose Ndamukong Suh, who's now with the Rams. And so with the Dolphins, now that Jay Cutler, he's no longer with the team.
No, they didn't resign him. They're expecting Tannehill to return.
But Ryan Tannehill, I mean, they need to sign a quarterback because Ryan Tannehill, as you can see, he can't stay healthy. Ryan Tannehill is inconsistent. And so Ryan Tannehill has to really show up for the Dolphins this season. This is the season to where he has to show up for the Dolphins. He has to put together a good performance. So there's no telling where these Dolphins are going.
And out of their drafts, Mika Fitzpatrick, only one that jumps out to me, and rookie. I don't even know how he's doing in the preseason right now, to be honest with you.
I mean, Minka Fitzpatrick in Alabama, he has a nose for the ball and for the backfield, and he has a pretty high football IQ. He's the type of guy. He's like a field general in that secondary. Watch him in Alabama, he was absolutely remarkable.
He was, but again, it's like, how does that translate into the NFL? I mean, just look, case in point, Trent Richardson.
Look at Greg McElroy, Brody Croyle. That's just a couple names. Like, a lot of players from Alabama, they don't tend to have the best careers going into the league.
I know, it's just as weird as saying, because they're coming out of the Nick Saban coach team. Saban, best college coach ever, especially if he wins one more championship, he'll match Bear Bryant.
I mean, probably the best player to come out of Nick Saban's teams from Alabama would be Julio Jones. That's probably the best player to probably come out. He was.
So it's just the weirdest thing because obviously Alabama gets all the top 5-star recruits outside of a handful.
But just a little segment of what if. Just what if Drew Brees did not go to New Orleans? He went to Miami. Then we wouldn't be talking about Alabama right now being one of the greatest dynasty, in all of college football. We'd probably be talking about LSU or something.
Well, I mean, not to rabbit trail too far. I mean, that's a discussion for all in and of itself. But obviously, Les Miles would not have lost out in recruiting battles to Nick Saban like he constantly did, and LSU would have probably ended up with players like Landon Collins. And like you said, it would have been an LSU dynasty, which is easy to see without Nick Saban at Alabama. But Philadelphia Eagles transitioning to the NFC East. Not many additions.
Hello, Dinata.
Hello, I can't pronounce names very well. Defensive tackle, solid.
Also adding Mike Wallace, which was a huge addition coming from the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, I will give them credit for Wallace. And they also traded for Bennett with Seattle.
Bennett, they're adding playmakers on their defense, especially having Haloti Ngata. Like that defensive line's gonna be nasty. Now on that, you got what's his name, Fletcher Cox coming back on D line, and so that Eagles front seven is gonna be nasty. And you also got Kendricks coming back at linebacker. So I can really see this Eagles team really making a run for it again next season.
I do see them winning the East easily, and I think they will be a top 2 seed. I don't know about number 1 again. I think there's some teams out there that would definitely trade or challenge for that. But they did have some significant losses. LeGarrette Blount, Trey Burton, so you don't have those 2 tight ends in there anymore. Burton, and
but they do have Dallas Goedert, who they drafted from South Dakota State, who was one of the best, who was probably the best tight end in the draft, next to Hayden Hurst from South Carolina.
Yeah, but to me, I like to hold out on rookies until I see them in meaningful games. And then also with rookies, you got to give them at least 2 to 3 years to really, adapt to the NFL and develop their own style, their own skill.
But also, you got to understand that you have some rookies that week 1 of their rookie year, they're thrown in there, and so they have to grow up quicker than usual. And so you look at guys like Cam Newton, who had to come into his own rookie season. Look at Jameis Winston, Andrew Luck, guys who were thrown in immediately. So now with rookies kind of like Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, those are the type of players that I can give a couple of years to really come into their own, because they have quarterbacks they can learn from. They have, they can learn from a lot of the veterans. They can sit, learn, take notes, and really make themselves a little bit more marketable.
Also, their secondary also took a hit with the loss of Patrick Robinson, who signed with the Saints.
And what I like about Patrick Robinson is that, he's coming back to New Orleans. He was drafted out of Florida State by the New Orleans Saints. And ever since leaving the Saints, going to Philadelphia, he's really evolved his game. He's evolved into one of the more deadlier corners in the league. And so him coming to New Orleans, not only it brings experience, you're talking about a guy who knows the game, who has experience, but he also knows the Saints defensive system. He also knows how the Saints run. So this is a guy who can really bring some experience along with Kurt Coleman to that Saints secondary.
Outside of Goddard, anyone jump out on the Eagles draft for you?
Very late in the draft, they drafted a rugby player who stands around 6'7", 6'8", weighing around 300 pounds. I think that was Jordan Mailata. I mean, I'm curious to see how the Eagles use him. I mean, honestly, I would use him to be a tackle due to how aggressive he is. I mean, especially if you run counter plays, if you have your running back run between the tackles, Jordan Mailata will probably have a good time out there. I mean, you can use him either way, or if you're able to, use him both ways. I mean, that's basically football without the pads, and it takes a lot of ruthless aggression to really make it in the sport of rugby. So I'm curious to see how they use Jordan Mailata.
Okay, New York Giants, almost nothing here. The highlight of they signed a lot of people in free agency, like a ton, at least 10, I think. But Nate Solder was the only one that really was of any note.
Well, I mean, it adds much needed protection to the offensive line, especially against Saquon Barkley. And I feel with Eli Manning, yeah, he's hitting that age drop off, but I feel Eli Manning still has some value to him. I feel that he could break out any time. They needed a run game too, because in football, the run game is going to help open up the passing game, because it takes pressure off the quarterback. It lets the quarterback know, okay, we can get yards through running, we can do this, and next thing you know, you can start throwing the ball, you can start airing it out a little bit. Having Saquon Barkley, having him run the ball, having Nate Solder on that offensive line to be able to create holes, it's going to take some pressure off Eli Manning. You got Odell Beckham, he finally showed up to camp. So I can see the Giants taking a couple steps up, but I mean, I see them making a huge improvement than last season. I can see them winning up 7 or 8 games this season coming up. I can see them getting a little better. Good job.
In my notes here, it looks like I accidentally left out the Dallas Cowboys. So, oops. But I do know
which
that
was
from
which was
the
crazy.
Cowboys,
Who is their franchise receiver?
Their losses were bigger than their gains, it would seem, like with the release of Des Bryant. So, you don't really have a number 1 anymore, and your number 2 just retired, Jason Witten. So, and it's like they did nothing. I don't even did they draft a running back, because they still don't have anyone behind Ezekiel Elliott, as far as I can think. And without Elliott, they're not that good.
I mean, their offense is rendered useless without Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, you can't run the ball all the time. You gotta be able to air it out. And here's my thing about the Dallas Cowboys. I was hoping that they would jump on the Dallas Go Dare sweepstakes as far as in the draft. Jason Witten retiring, you need a tight end. Either Hayden Hurst or Dallas Go Dare. That was where the Cowboys had to go first round. But they chose to get Leighton Vander Esch, a linebacker out of Boise State, who is showing some type of poise in training camp. But, I mean, you need a linebacker because Sean Lee cannot stay healthy at all. With the Cowboys, having Dak Prescott, who did an amazing job his rookie year, him and Ezekiel Elliott were their 1-2 punch. You lost Des Bryant. You lost Jason Witten. You don't have anybody behind Ezekiel Elliott. I see the Cowboys taking quite a few steps back next season.
Yeah, especially with Dak Prescott still kind of in the developmental stage as far as I'm concerned. He seems like real promising. Like, he will be, I want to say a top 10 quarterback at some point, but right now he's just kind of, he doesn't have a lot of support around him, especially now that they've gotten rid of Des Bryant.
I mean, now, a couple guys that you could probably look to as far as receiving to really help build that offense would be guys like Cole Beasley, Ryan Switzer, who was one of the speedy receivers coming out of North Carolina. Another highlight of their free agency was re-signing DeMarcus Lawrence at defensive end. And that was a huge get that they had to get him back. And not only that, they have a pretty decent offensive line. Lyle Collins, Doug Free, also Tyron Smith, who is a complete monster on that offensive line. So Dallas, they might show a little bit of promise, but I really don't see them making a lot of progress this season coming up.
I don't either. Honestly, I see them fighting the Giants for fourth in the division. And that's only because Washington still has a solid quarterback. And I guess we transition to the Washington Redskins, who, as far as I'm concerned, just kind of swap names at the quarterback position. I mean, outside of Alex Smith being a little bit older than Kirk Cousins, I don't see their skill set being too much different.
Pretty much. I mean, Alex Smith, it took him a few years to kind of really come into his own. And in his later days with San Francisco, before he got hurt, he was the guy at San Francisco, especially being under Coach Harbaugh. And then going to the Chiefs, being under Andy Reid, Alex Smith was a guy, and he just built up his market over the years, and now he's with the Washington Redskins, and which was a huge pickup after losing your franchise quarterback Kirk Cousins, who took over after RG3 didn't live up to promise. So you got Alex Smith. Not only that, I was looking forward to seeing Darius Geis this season, but he tore his ACL week 1. That was bad.
I know. The ACL day 1, and that's nasty.
You also add Terrell Pryor in the receiving core. You got Paul Richardson from Seattle, who was a good contributor at receiver for the Seattle Seahawks.
Actually, they lost Terrell Pryor.
It's been a long day, people. I'm sorry. Look, little brain fart. Day 1 for us as well. So please give us some time.
Day 1 for us, folks.
But Paul Richardson was also a pretty good pickup from Seattle. He was a pretty good contributor in the receiving core. A guy that I'm looking at going into this season, a couple guys, Samaje Perine, who contributed pretty well this past season at running back. Daron Payne, defensive tackle coming out of Alabama, who was a complete monster getting into that backfield. And so he's going to be a guy I'm looking at, especially with him coming from Alabama. And like we said earlier, guys who come from Alabama usually don't have the best career. So it's kind of like a curse if you go to Alabama and try to go into the league.
So overall, AFC East, I don't see a change in the pecking order. I see New England still winning that division, but kind of by default, by just having the better team of the 4.
You got Miami,
cellar dweller.
You got Buffalo,
cellar dweller.
You got Buffalo, and you got Houston in your division. Wait, Houston's not in their division. I'm sorry.
It's New York Jets.
The Jets. Jets, Dolphins, and Bills.
Yeah, I see Bills finishing number 2. I think they have the more developed defense at this point and more promising stability at quarterback, at least for this season. The New York Jets seem to be really serious about contending, obviously building up that defense, getting rid of some of the disruptive players in the locker room, and drafting Sam Darnold. So number 3 overall, USC. There's some real potential there. Josh Allen, a project player, but also a strong arm. He looked really well in the preseason game, but like we said, how is he going to perform against number 1s?
A team that I'm looking at going into next season out of the AFC is the Houston Texans. You got Deshaun Watson coming back, and in which, before he got hurt this past season, Houston had probably the top offense in the league, hanging 40 and 50 points on other teams. And, of course, you got DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver, who, in my opinion, is a top 5 receiver in the league. Defense, you got Jadeveon Clowney coming back. You got J.J. Watt coming back, finally. He had to miss nearly all of last season due to injury. And so the Texans is a team that I'm looking at going into next season. I'm also looking at the Tennessee Titans. Marcus Mariota is going to his contract year. This is the final year of his rookie contract, so he's coming in with a chip on his shoulder. He kind of took a step back last season despite Tennessee making it to the playoffs, knocking off Kansas City in the wild card. And so that's the team I'm looking at. Jacksonville, can they duplicate their performance from last season, making it all the way to the AFC Championship and going down to the wire with New England? And so I'm going to be looking at Jacksonville. Some people say they might take a step back, but I think Jacksonville's going to bring that same intensity. They got Blake Bortles coming back. You got Leonard Fournette, who was a monster at running back. You also got Sac City defense led by Calais Campbell at defensive end. Now, they did lose Allen Robinson to the Chicago Bears. and so they lose a little bit of their receiving core. So I mean, it's a toss up whether Jacksonville's going to take a step back or whether they're going to take a couple steps up.
Yeah. So, I mean, that covers the East divisions. I guess next time we'll talk a little bit more about the North divisions. And,
North divisions.
seeing how we only have 3 weeks of preseason left, I might try to make some ground up with talking about the South divisions as well.
Right.
But yeah, I know you're looking forward to get to those.
I'm also looking forward to getting to like teams in the NFC North, like Green Bay Packers. You got Aaron Rodgers coming back. They added Jimmy Graham and Muhammad Wilkerson. They did lose Jordy Nelson, and so adding Jimmy Graham was a must because I mean, who else they got? Randall Cobb. You know, you got the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah. Do they? Did they not? I know they got rid of Jordy Nelson, but they still have Cobb.
They still have Cobb. Cobb was a Pro Bowler last season.
Okay.
Also, I mean, I'm really into talking about the Minnesota Vikings. They got Kirk Cousins. They also re-signed Stephon Diggs to a 5-year, $81 million extension. You got Adam Thielen, who was a player who came out of nowhere last season. You look at their defense: Xavier Rhodes, Everson Griffin, Eric Kendricks. Am I missing anybody? Oh yeah, Anderson Sendejo at the safety position. Who else am I missing? I mean, and they got Dalvin Cook coming back at running back, who was hurt, who was having a pretty good season until he got hurt.
You know, I kind of feel like the Vikings are that team that their window is now, and I think they realized that, hence their really serious shot that they took at Drew Brees. I mean, if the reports are correct, which I would not be surprised if it was, especially seeing how much they offered Cousins. Like statistically they outbid New Orleans.
But Drew Brees wants to bring the Super Bowl back to New Orleans. With some players, it's not all about the money. I mean, it's also about, bonding with your city. I mean, look at what Drew Brees helped resurrect in New Orleans. And so, yes, I'm pretty sure that there are some teams that outbid the Saints. I would not be surprised. But he is. And he realized that with him being with the Saints, it's not just about just being with the franchise. It's about the whole city. It's about everything he's done. It's about the legacy he's built. And he'll forever be a legend of New Orleans. I mean, you look at the Vikings, this is the time for them to really break out. If there's any year for them to make a Super Bowl run, it is this season. You got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Case Keenum, who's also with the Broncos right now, who I see being the Week 1 starter for Denver, considering what he did last season. But you have a much deadlier quarterback who loves to air it out. You have a running back, Dalvin Cook, who is a tough runner, who has a chip on his shoulder as well, coming back from injury. You got Stephon Diggs, who signed his extension. You got Adam Thielen. Not only that, defense, you got Everson Griffin. You got Anderson Sendejo. You got Xavier Rhodes. You got Kendricks at linebacker. You also got Anthony Barr. The time is now for the Vikings to try and make a run, but they got to run into guys like the Eagles, the Saints, the Rams. And so this is going to be, I feel that the NFC is going to be the tougher division this season.
Oh, the NFC is loaded. The NFC is definitely loaded, especially with like quality defensive teams that actually have a complementing offense. You know, the AFC has a lot of strong defenses, but those teams, their offenses are still a question mark, like Jacksonville. Blake Bortles, okay, $54 million extension. Now, we're closing in on 40 minutes here, so for first podcast, I think just kind of wrap this one up and look forward to next time. All right. I'm John Behrens and my co-host.
I'm Joshua Perkins, and trust me, I'll be back. I'm not co-host just for today. I'm co-host for life, y'all. But it's a huge honor. This idea was John's idea. John was like, "Hey, I want to do this podcast because we talk sports all the time at work." And so this was all.
And get
Oh,
fussed out.
of course, I still get my freight done, but this was an idea that was brought together by John, in which, with me having experience in broadcasting from my college days in Northwestern State, honestly it was a huge honor to be able to be invited to be on this podcast with him. So I'm definitely grateful to get this opportunity.
All right, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed that and join us next time.
Signing out.